With a simple truth Jim Rohn often reminded us of, life does not ask for our permission before it tests us. One day you think you understand the rules, the next day something happens that shakes your confidence, your direction, and sometimes even your faith. You may feel lost, not because you are weak, but because you are human. And in those moments, when plans fail and expectations collapse, a quiet question rises in the heart: does anyone see me? Does God still care about me here? Tonight, I want to talk to you about that place, the place of confusion, disappointment, and silent prayers, and why being lost does not mean being forgotten. In fact, it may be the very place where care, purpose, and growth begin. The four keynotes of this message are simple and timeless. Feeling lost is not failure, it is a signal for growth. God's care is constant, even when circumstances are confusing. Responsibility and personal development restore direction. Faith combined with discipline transforms pain into purpose. Now, let us look closely at the first idea. When people say they feel lost, what they usually mean is that life did not turn out the way they planned. They followed the rules they were taught, worked hard, trusted others, made sacrifices, and yet the results do not match the effort. This gap between expectation and reality is where the feeling of being lost is born. Jim Rohn would say that frustration is the beginning of wisdom if we learn the right lesson from it. Feeling lost is not a sign that something has gone wrong with you, it is a sign that something new is being asked of you. Nature itself works this way. When a seed is buried in the dark, it is not lost, it is preparing to grow. But in the darkness, the seed might believe it has been abandoned. Still, the laws of growth are at work even when the seed cannot see them. Many people confuse being lost with being punished. They assume that if things are not working, God must be distant or displeased. But consider this: the teacher is often silent during the exam, not because the teacher does not care, but because the student must now demonstrate growth. Life tests character in silence. God's care is not always loud, sometimes it is expressed through the opportunity to become stronger, wiser, and more disciplined. When you feel lost, you are standing at a crossroads of choice. You can either surrender to confusion or begin the work of self-examination. Jim Rohn emphasized personal responsibility not as blame, but as power. The moment you take responsibility for where you are, you reclaim the ability to change direction. Feeling lost often comes from giving away too much control, over time, money, emotions, or expectations, to other people. When those people fail us, the inner compass begins to spin. But responsibility brings it back into focus. You start asking better questions. What am I learning? What habits led me here? What must I change? These questions are not accusations, they are invitations to grow. Loss has a way of stripping life down to essentials. When something is taken from you, trust, security, resources, you discover what remains. And what remains is usually more valuable than what was lost: character, faith, resilience, and wisdom. People who have never felt lost often live borrowed lives, following paths chosen by others. Those who feel lost are often being invited to choose their own path for the first time. This is uncomfortable, but it is also powerful. Comfort rarely produces growth. Confusion, when handled correctly, does. Think about how direction is found in the physical world. If you are truly lost, you stop wandering. You pause. You observe. You reorient yourself using fixed points: the sun, the stars, a map. In life, those fixed points are values, principles, and faith. When emotions are loud and circumstances are chaotic, principles remain quiet but stable. Jim Rohn taught that success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day, while failure is a few errors in judgment repeated daily. Feeling lost is often the result of small disciplines neglected over time, not one great mistake. And the solution is the same way back: small disciplines practiced consistently. God's care is not proven by the absence of difficulty, but by the presence of opportunity within difficulty. When you are lost, you are given the rare chance to redesign your life. Most people never do because they are too busy maintaining what is not working. Feeling lost interrupts the routine. It forces reflection. It demands honesty. And honesty is the foundation of transformation. You begin to see where you settled, where you compromised, where you ignored your own intuition. This awareness is painful, but it is also cleansing. Jim Rohn often said that we must all suffer one of two pains: the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. Feeling lost is often the early pain of discipline knocking on the door, asking you to make adjustments before regret settles in. Discipline does not mean harshness, it means structure. It means deciding what matters and aligning daily actions with that decision. When structure returns, direction follows. And with direction comes renewed hope. Hope is not wishful thinking, it is the expectation that effort, guided by principle, will produce results over time. God's care is woven into this process through laws of sowing and reaping, growth, cause and effect. You may not see immediate results, but the process is already working in your favor when your actions align with truth. Feeling lost is often the moment before alignment. It is the moment before clarity. It is the pause before a more meaningful advance. People who emerge strongest from being lost are those who stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" That shift alone restores power. You are no longer a victim of circumstance, you become a student of life. And life is a generous teacher to those who pay attention. Every disappointment carries information. Every delay carries instruction. Every setback carries the seed of equal or greater benefit, if you are willing to look for it. God's care is not something you earn by being perfect, it is something you experience by being attentive. Attentive to lessons, to conscience, to quiet guidance. When the noise of success fades, the whisper of wisdom becomes audible. Many people only hear that whisper when they feel lost. And perhaps that is why the feeling exists, not to punish you, but to slow you down enough to listen. As you reflect on moments when you felt lost, notice how often they preceded growth, change, or deeper understanding. The job you did not get, the relationship that ended, the resources that disappeared, each one may have redirected you towards something more aligned with who you were becoming. At the time, it felt like loss. In hindsight, it often looks like guidance. God's care is sometimes clearer in retrospect than in the moment, but it is no less real. Feeling lost strips away illusions. It shows you the difference between what you truly value and what you merely pursued out of habit or expectation. That clarity is priceless. Many people live their entire lives without it. So if you feel lost today, consider the possibility that you are not off the path, you are being repositioned on it. The discomfort you feel is not abandonment, it is adjustment. And adjustment is the beginning of mastery. When you accept that being lost is part of growth, fear begins to loosen its grip. You stop rushing for quick answers and start building solid foundations. You become patient with the process and disciplined with your actions. And slowly, almost quietly, direction returns, not as a dramatic revelation, but as a steady confidence that you are moving with purpose again. Showed us that feeling lost is not failure but a signal, then the second truth is even deeper. God's care does not disappear just because clarity does. Many people believe that when life becomes confusing, God has stepped away. Jim Rohn would remind us that the laws of life never take a day off. The sun does not stop rising because you are discouraged, and growth does not stop working because you are afraid. In the same way, God's care continues quietly, steadily, even when you cannot interpret the signs. When you feel lost, it is often because you are looking for certainty before taking responsibility. But life works the other way around. Responsibility creates clarity, not the opposite. You do not wait to feel confident before you act in alignment with principles, and confidence follows. God's care is built into this system. He does not remove all obstacles, He gives you the capacity to grow stronger by facing them. Strength is not given as a gift, it is developed as a result. Jim Rohn taught that we become the average of the influences we allow into our lives. When someone feels lost, it is often because they have allowed outside voices to drown out inner values. Opinions replace principles, emotions replace discipline, and urgency replaces wisdom. God's care often shows up as discomfort in those moments. That discomfort is not cruelty, it is correction. It is the inner signal telling you that something is out of alignment. Pain with purpose is guidance. Consider how often people pray for change but resist personal growth. They ask for better outcomes without better habits. Yet life responds to behavior, not wishes. God's care operates through laws, and laws reward alignment. When you align your daily actions with truth, effort, and integrity, life begins to respond differently. The feeling of being lost starts to fade, not because everything suddenly becomes easy, but because you regain direction. Discipline is one of the clearest expressions of faith. Faith is not passive hope, it is active trust. It is trusting that small, consistent actions matter even when results are delayed. Jim Rohn would say that success is predictable. So is failure. Both follow patterns. Feeling lost is often the result of drifting away from simple disciplines, reading, learning, managing resources, choosing attitudes carefully. God's care invites you back to simplicity, because simplicity restores power. When life humbles you, it is offering you a new foundation. Pride demands answers, humility seeks understanding. People who feel lost but remain humble begin to notice lessons everywhere. A setback becomes a teacher. A disappointment becomes feedback. Silence becomes space for reflection. God's care is often hidden in these quiet forms. Not everything meaningful arrives with noise and celebration. Some of the most important changes happen internally, where no one else can see them. Jim Rohn often spoke about seasons. There are seasons to plant and seasons to harvest. Feeling lost is usually a planting season, not a harvesting one. You are investing in character, patience, and wisdom. The problem is that many people quit planting because they expect immediate results. God's care is not rushed. It respects the process. Growth that lasts is built slowly, layer by layer. When resources are limited, values are revealed. When comfort is removed, character is tested. These moments show you who you really are and what you truly depend on. If your confidence collapses when circumstances change, then your confidence was built on outcomes, not principles. God's care calls you to build on something stronger. Principles do not change with circumstances. They remain stable when emotions fluctuate. Feeling lost can also be an invitation to forgive others and yourself. Resentment clouds direction. Guilt drains energy. Jim Rohn emphasized that you cannot carry yesterday's burdens into tomorrow and expect progress. God's care includes release. Release from bitterness, from regret, from the need to control everything. When you let go, you create space for growth. Direction often returns after release, not before it. Faith grows when you continue doing what is right without immediate reward. That is maturity. That is trust in action. When you wake up, do the work, keep your word, and manage your attitude despite uncertainty, you are participating in a higher order of growth. God's care honors that kind of faith because it aligns with truth. You are no longer reacting to life, you are shaping it. Jim Rohn would remind us that motivation fades, but discipline remains. Feeling lost often happens when motivation runs out. That is when discipline must take over. Discipline is not punishment, it is self-respect. It is the decision to act in your long-term interest rather than your short-term comfort. God's care supports discipline because discipline builds capacity, and capacity creates opportunity. As you continue forward, you may not suddenly feel found. Direction usually returns gradually. First comes stability, then clarity, then momentum. Each step depends on the previous one. God's care is present at every stage, but it requires participation. You are not rescued from growth, you are invited into it. And the invitation remains open as long as you are willing to learn, adjust, and persist. When you understand this, being lost no longer feels like abandonment. It feels like preparation. You stop asking for escape and start asking for wisdom. You stop demanding certainty and start practicing discipline. And in that process, almost without noticing, you begin to walk with purpose again.